I guess I better go live because it's time to go live, guys. Welcome to today's show. We're doing our Homestead update 1 week early, and Tactical dropped a crowbar on his phone, so I don't think he's going to join us for the Q&A after, but it is what it is. I'm not 1 week early, 1 day early. I'm heading out at like 6 in the morning tomorrow to start a long drive to the beautiful state of Maine to stay at a friend's house for a week and sort of unplug and reorient. I have 20 my three things today, and don't worry, I'm not really trying to do 20. I need to do all 20 of these things before I leave. And one of the fun parts about going out of town is it really makes you prioritize. There are 3 things on this list that are my primary priority of today. I like must be packed by the end of the day, and I'm recording 2 shows. Those are really my 3 things. This is the first of 2. I may be live this afternoon around 3 with a very special surprise interview. It might get canceled again, and then if that happens, we'll reschedule. The reason I haven't promoted that other show in advance is the person's schedule is crazy. But, maybe be thinking about 3 o'clock, check in, because I think you're going to want to watch this one. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's at 3 o'clock today. So today we're recording our Homestead happenings for the week. I sat down with Tactical and did the notes for this morning, and I will record it like a podcast, which means I'm going to play the song and I'm going to remember to turn the little stupid loop thing off so we don't get the Living Free in Tennessee on a loop as I begin. If you're on the live stream, remember how you ask questions or make comments is put the first few words minimum in all caps. You can put the whole thing in all caps. I'm going to star it. I may not read it as I go, but then at the end we'll do Q&A. There will be an awkward pause before I start. There will be an awkward pause after I finish, and then we'll get this done. Now, if you are new to the live stream, welcome. This is a live stream of a podcast, an audio podcast recording called Living Free in Tennessee. If you want to find out more about that, our website is livingfreeintennessee.com. Basically, we focus on helping you choose to live the life you want to live on your terms and not worry about what other people think you should do, because that just means you're living your life for somebody else. We're finding ways to empower each other to live the life we actually want that centers around our own priorities of what we love to do and how we want to be. And a lot of how I want to be is on a homestead producing high quality food from my land, getting peace and quiet as I go. And I talk a lot about homesteading things. I talk about small business things because I've been building a coffee business. Well, I've had it since 2010, but I've really been building it seriously for about 5 years. We're in our 5th year now. I managed to stay in business that whole time. I have not paid myself much from the business to get that done. And I won't hide that story because a lot of people want to start their own businesses and they're really pissed off in 2 months when they're not like replacing their salary. And it's like, well, okay. A lot of people start businesses and don't replace their salary that quickly. So it's good to have a realistic view of what that looks like. For those of you who've been here before and think somebody else should hear it, why don't you do me a favor today? Share this live stream on social media and invite people in, and they can hear about the Homestead update for August 18th, 2022. Anyway, with that, I'm going to start the show. 5-second pause, start the show, jump in, questions in all caps, star them for later, end show, 5-second break, and then we'll go back into the more conversational live stream approach that you guys who come to YouTube and to Float and to all these other things to check us out. Not Float. I am on Float today if it's working. I am also on Odyssey. Odyssey people, I'm going to try to remember to look at you. I'm going to pull that up right now. And then we're going to start the live stream. I have to just go to my channel. Where is my channel? Oh, look, there's a live. Don't reset the stream. Go to the live. Hit the mute button. And hello, Odyssey people. I see you. I had somebody last week put a question in and I forgot to look over there again. Again, all caps. And I did talk about what I dip salsa with if you're keto. That was the question I missed last week. So sorry about that, Cheetah 68, but we'll get you going there anyway. Now let's get this show on the road.
The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Well, welcome everyone to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Thursday, August 18th, 2022, and this is episode 609 of Living Free in Tennessee. And we are recording a Friday show one day early because I'm heading out of town this week. So you may be listening to this on Friday on the audio podcast. That's okay. I recorded it yesterday just so you'd have something today because I don't have something. They don't have a good way to podcast from a car with limited internet access. We'll just put it that way. So today we're going to catch up on things around the homestead, including we got livestock guardian dogs, and that has been crazy. We're just orienting with the sheep, and I'm learning a lot about livestock guardian dogs the hard way, which means in person. So far, I haven't lost my face. See, it's still here. Homestead boot camp update. I gave a little bit of one yesterday when we did our live stream with John Willis and Billy Bond. Creating a new garden bed, like getting garden beds ready for fall and spring at this point. It's time to do that. And just a little bit about what it's like on a homestead when one of us is going to be gone and what we're doing to just get a little ahead of the game so that when there aren't two of us here, one person can manage it a little bit better. So there we go. Also next week, as I mentioned to y'all on the live and not to you on the podcast, I will be on the road, off grid, not checking email, not looking at my phone for a week. And I'm doing that on purpose. The reason I'm doing that is that I need a real break, and I'm going to take a real break. I'm going to go see a friend of mine in Maine, driving up with another friend of mine who's picking me up whenever he arrives first thing in the morning. And the three of us are going to go up there in car. And I'm coming back by plane. I'm not sure. I actually haven't looked at what town in Maine I'm going to be in because I don't care. I know it's probably not a good prepper thing to do, but I'm just heading up and going dark. What that means for the shows next week. I have the other half of my interview with Tim Toolman is coming out on the podcast as the Wednesday podcast. It did not come out on Wednesday because there's another thing going on. It's coming out today though. And then Friday, this one's coming out. And then Monday, the first half of something I recorded with Billy Bond and John Willis is coming. And then Wednesday, the second half of that is coming out. And then Friday, if I have any unplayed interviews, that's when that's going to come out. If I don't, I think I have one. So there should be 3 shows next week. If that interview for some reason has disappeared from my audio file, then we will not have a podcast Friday. I'll be back the following Monday with podcasts. I am also going to be live with Xavier Hawk and John Willis on Wednesday. It's the one thing I am doing because I didn't want to break that Wednesday live schedule. Plus, this close to Self-Reliance Festival, it's good to highlight Self-Reliance Festival speakers. And Xavier Hawk is one of those. And he is the person from whom I learned about plants sensing what your body needs micronutrient wise if you're tending them, and then pulling those up out of the ground. So I'm going to give him the heads up. I'm going to ask him about that on the podcast because I've forgotten where to go to read that research, and I'm getting more and more interested in it as I address some fatigue and health issues this year. One of the things I started doing very purposefully about 3 weeks ago, to the extent I can, vegetables that I eat are from here. They're ones I've raised. I do feel better. I've made a number of other changes though too, but I wanted to go back and read that. So that's what we're doing on today's show. I do want to remind you, if there is something you want to hear about or something you want to add to the show, you can email me, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, or head over to livingfreeintennessee.com. Click on the contact link and send me an email. With that, it's time for the first segment of today's show, Forage. This is where we talk about what I'm finding that's more of a wild or herbal category on the land. Goldenrod is out. It's time to harvest. I've got mullein seeds. Time to harvest. Watercress is back up, and that's because we've had an unusually cool August. We had an unusually hot June and July. We've had an unusually cool August. That has pretty much saved our bacon on the production side. If we had continued Inferno style into August and gotten even hotter, which is possible, then I would have had a real struggle with anything but like okra and sweet potatoes. Both of those things like hot. They also do like to get water. We were not getting water for a couple months. That's a little unusual, but not impossible here. So I'm really thankful it's cooled down. We're getting a lot of things that wouldn't be here yet because of that. We're getting a little bit of a fall experience. The animals are acting like it's fall. The trees are acting like it's fall. If we heat up again, like oven heat up, it's going to cause dry leaves and death. And that I've seen that happen here before where we had a cool August. We ended up getting a late August hurricane pattern. And then September was hot as hell. And things didn't like that. Like the fall colors ended up being brown and not so much golden and orange and reds. It was brown. It was brown and not the end of the world. The trees came back the next year, but I am kind of ramping up for, is that going to happen again? I don't know. But right now, while we have abundance, I played seed roulette and started seeding bean rows like mad. I have 2 additional bean rows coming up, one under one that is dying, one in a totally different place where the garlic was, and those plants are starting to put flowers on. So I hope when I get back from Maine to have a second coming of beans. I'm still getting green beans off the one like fruitful roll I've had, but it's just like a mess at a time. And a mess at a time equals about 2 quarts. And my goal for green beans is 56 quarts. I have 36 right now. I'm 20 shy. I'm hoping we make that up. If we don't, whatever. I have a lot of sweet potato greens. We'll talk about that later. Echinacea flowers are still coming on new. So you harvest echinacea flower as they're unopened or right as they're opening before they go into their signature cone shape and start making big seeds. So that is being, I've only harvested 3 because I'm not taking them all because I want that plant to kind of reseed itself. It's second year in production. I transplanted it this year from one place to another. So it's had a bit of a weird year, but it's doing well. And to the extent that I can get an echinacea patch instead of an echinacea plant, that would be a good thing. It's also right next to the big dill plant that I'm letting reseed itself. And then other herbs. It's, the sage needs to be harvested. I'm harvesting basil like mad. And then I take the leaves off and I put it in the freezer and I'll freeze dry that eventually. I could have had the freeze dryer up this week. It's been cool enough. But from a time standpoint, it didn't make sense to be trying to keep up on that while doing everything else. So I did not run the freeze dryer this week. Sassafras leaves have been harvestable for a while, and they made themselves known to me this week. Sassafras leaves are great in stews. Like they'll help thicken the broth. That's another way to thicken broth without flour. So go out and get your sassafras leaves. One way to know that you have found a sassafras tree, besides the sort of twisted looking bark that's a little bit orange, is the leaves are like this, and they're like this, and they're like that. And for those of you on the audio podcast, I put my hand up, I stuck my thumb out. So sometimes the leaves have thumbs. Sometimes the leaves have a couple of fingers and thumbs. And then they're rounded, not pointy. So there's another plant that does this that's pointy. They're not. They're rounded. So when you see just leaf with just one leaf shape, or has a thumb, or has 2 fingers and a thumb, and those are all on the same tree, that's a good chance it's a sassafras. Pull a leaf, split it open, smell it. It's going to smell kind of like root beer because sassafras flavor is root beer flavor, right? So smell that. And if that's smelling like root beer, you got a pretty good chance of knowing that you have a sassafras leaf, and it makes really good tea. Dry those leaves for the winter, put them in the tea, bring it to a boil, let it steep for 6 minutes or so. And it's sort of a light root beer flavored tea. You can, as I said, the leaves you can use for thickening stew, and you harvest the roots more in the winter when all the good stuff's in the roots. And that's what most people use for making root beer. The fodder trees need their final round of harvest. I'm legitimately not getting to this till I get back from Maine, but I started showing people how to harvest fodder tree stuff at our open house, and my hand clippers were not enough to do it. I needed my bigger clippers. And I haven't gone back up and finished that job. So I need to do it to the mulberry trees, the poplar trees, and I am harvesting for my box elder trees. I've got a couple willow trees I'm going to coppice now. Is what it is, guys. Kind of as the sap starts going down, I'm going to coppice them sooner rather than later, rather than waiting till late in the winter. I have them marked as well in case I don't get that done. But willow is another good fodder tree. This year, the yield is like enough for me to feed it to the animals as I'm going. The goats have had a great year eating the fresh stuff. I haven't dried it for winter storage. We have hay for the sheep. We bought the hay for the sheep. In fact, when we talk, like the money we got from Homestead Boot Camp went to feed the sheep. That's literally what happened. It was like bloop, 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 300 short on that or so. And there you go. That's something about homestead life when you're getting value from the world that you put together. Sometimes what you're doing is just folding one thing for another, and then you're at a net zero, right? So I didn't have to buy hay for the sheep. Now the sheep have hay for the winter. It's stored in a secure, dry place, so we don't get moldy hay. Very important. And I was able to get Timothy grass at this time of year at a decent price. I was going to get 40 bales. And the guy was like, how about 42 for the same price? I'm like, I'll take 2 free bales. Like this year has been a year for that. So that's everything coming off the land that I've seen. There are other things like mushrooms should be coming on. I've heard people finding chanterelles. I haven't found any. Dryad saddle usually pops out right about now. Oyster mushrooms should be coming soon. It can be anytime between now and November that they come on. And we will see, right? I haven't been hiking in the woods as much for 2 reasons. One, chiggers and rattlesnakes. That's one. And then the other thing is just time-wise, with the addition of the sheep this year, all the schedules are messed up. And my priority has been do my best in the garden because Tactical is spending a lot of time with the sheep and not helping me in the garden. Except for he did turn on the sprinkler yesterday, so that was super helpful. Next segment is livestock. This is where we talk about what's up with the animals on the homestead. Lady Pig is pregnant. Lady Pig is due in about 3 weeks. And LB is the father. So we have a proven boar here, half Duroc, half Idaho pasture pig. He is up for sale. I would like $150 for LB. If anybody's interested in a pig that gets the job done with a fairly decent demeanor, he's a nice boy, and he's a big boy. Let me know. He is ready to move on to new pastures. I would prefer not to have him here when the piglets are born because then I'm going to have to maintain 2 different pastures, one for male and one for everybody else. And that's more work than we want to do. Plus, this is the last batch of piglets we're planning to do with Lady Pig. I think we're going to find a new home for her. She's Idaho pasture pig. So if you're interested in her, let me know. I wanted to let her get through birth so I don't sell somebody a pig that has problems in birth. She's been a great mother. She was a great mother for the first batch. We're probably going to keep 1 or 2 of the babies for processing and then sell off the rest after they're weaned. So that's happening. And that's the livestock update on the pigs. There was a rattlesnake in their pasture yesterday, apparently. So that was a whole big drama. I think the 2 rednecks took care of those, or the pigs did. Pigs will take care of those, by the way. Just FYI. So the sheep pasture is not on my land. It is next door. And by the way, guys, in the comments on the live stream, remember, if you want me to see your comment, put the first few words in all caps. I'm not looking at the words that are all lowercase. I assume you're talking to each other. If you're doing that, I will star them and handle them after the podcast recording. Anyway, so we were at the steepest part of the hill for putting the movable electric fence in to make paddocks to rotate the sheep. The sheep are rotating every 1 to 3 days, usually every 1 to 2 days. And working on that steep of ground for the first time is a huge cluster. It's a lot of work. You don't know what you're going to find because by we, I mean Tactical. Tactical is hacking through briars and raspberries and tall weeds, and he doesn't know what he's going to find under it. Like, he's found garden implements up there and other things of that nature. So he hacks through it. And this week was particularly difficult because the snarls were so thick, and then it's such steep terrain, and he can't drive his four-wheeler up it yet because he doesn't want to end up in the sinkhole. There's a sinkhole up there somewhere we haven't found yet. And, you know, you don't want to be going and then bloop, oh, I'm hurt. I'm stuck in a hole. I got to call Nicole. So that's been where most of the care of the sheep, like when I say it takes 4 times the work, what has been 4 times the work that we thought it was going to be is the easy movable fencing is not easy. And part of that is because we're on uncharted ground, right? And he's saying he found tractor implements. That's probably true, because anciently this was, like, in the 40s, this was all cultivated corn here. Guess what they made out of the corn? Wasn't animal feed. We find some of the remnants of that in the woods here too. Just the old equipment they were using to process the corn, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so that's been tough. And yesterday, I think he said, you know, the next time we cycle the sheep through, because we're trying to have them on sort of a 60-day cycle of where they are, it'll be easier because, like, the worst of the weeds will have been beat back, and then the sheep come through and they eat that stuff. And that makes it better, and they poop. And then what's been coming up behind is a more friendly pasture-like mix. And that's just the seed bank in the ground over there. We haven't overseeded there. We overseeded with some stuff here when we had them through because we had already disturbed the soil a boat ton by reshaping the hillside for the long-term permaculture plan. Like, the big earthworks is done here. So that's what's up with the sheep pasture. Again, if you're thinking of getting sheep and you're using them to graze your land and you have thickets that you're going to have to fence through, just know it's a lot more work than you think it's going to be. I am going to start, when I get back, we're going to start having a sheep chat sort of live stream. I think I'll put it behind the subscription wall, and we'll just do Q&A and evening discussions, probably evening. I'm not sure what time, but I think that's something a lot of y'all have asked for, and I think we will start doing that when I get back. Okay, the next part of sheep is that coyotes think they're delicious. Coyote season is not upon us yet. In the fall, when it's harder to find rabbits and possums and raccoons and whatever else coyotes are eating out in the woods, probably rats this year based on our experience here. And they have their babies. And they're teaching their babies to hunt. They go after deer, but they are going to come after our livestock, especially over there. We've already seen evidence of coyote scat in the perimeter. So we have some cameras up for that. And we decided so we're closing them in the barn so they don't get eaten by coyotes, but that exposes them to their own poop repeatedly, which is how we get parasites. And we don't, like, the strategy for keeping ruminants parasite free is keep moving them and don't put them back on their poop for 60 days, right? So we decided to get livestock guardian dogs, or LGDs. And the ones we have are half Pyrenees and half Anatolian Shepherd, which is the breed that Nick Ferguson recommends. And they grew up with goats and donkeys and horses and chickens and other dogs. And they've already killed coyote over there. So they've been trained by another LGD. Their mom's an LGD, right? So they have some chops in this department, but they were not raised around sheep. For some reason, I thought they were also raised around sheep. There are no sheep. And so we got them here. And anytime you move a dog from one place to another, it's like they grew up for 8 months on this other place. It's like trauma inducing. I've never been in a car before. I'm in a car. I'm in a strange place with strange people. Like, what do I do? Luckily, they're not vicious towards us. No manners at all. Doesn't know how to sit, doesn't know how to come, don't know how to be on a leash. And these are all things that we are starting to train them now, which some people in the livestock guardian world would caution against because you just want them to bond with the sheep and nothing else. But I need to be able to handle these dogs to take them to the vet if they need to go to the vet, because I can't always get a mobile vet out. I need them to be able to be handled for me to inspect them. Otherwise, they're going to have a much lower quality of life, right? So I'm teaching them basic commands. So is tactical. And the arrival day was a cluster because I got some advice, but the person forgot to tell me because they thought I already knew to put them in the equivalent of doggy Fort Knox because LGDs will get out. Now, I've always known that LGDs will get out because probably once a week, some farmers posting that their LGD is out, right? So, and we don't have a terribly good perimeter fence on that pasture over there because we don't own the land, and putting that infrastructure in seems like a lot of money for something that we don't own. And then we either have to take it out on the way out, which we're not going to do, or we've just fenced somebody else's property for them. So we're using electrical. And there is some perimeter fence left from when cattle were run over there. So we had them in a very secure place, but we did not want them to orient on that as home because it's base camp and other people are going to live at base camp with dogs. And I would really prefer the livestock guardian dogs and their dogs never meet. I don't want to see what that outcome is. So first day, before they spent a night there, I was like, let's get them down to the barn and have them oriented on that. And so Tactical electrified the fence, and there was a gap. So we had them over there. They were having a good time. They saw the sheep. They touched noses through a barrier we have up. Everybody was getting along. We left the dogs there with a little like portable shelter. Went back to the house to start doing evening animals. And this was also Jenny came into town to visit, right? So she arrived and she was kind of there helping us. And we were going to sit down and have brisket because we were celebrating Jenny by cooking a brisket. And we all like meat here. Tactical gets on Zello and he says to me, and Zello is a huge tool that we use here for communication, by the way. It's how we talk to each other because I don't know where he's going to be on the, basically on the 80 acres range that he is wandering all over all the time. So he gets on Zello and he's like, Nicole, we have a problem. Max just walked up the driveway. And I'm like, well, shit. So I'm like literally trying to get the brisket out. And I'm like, well, Jenny, I'll be back. And I get my phone. I go out there to help. And he's already walking Max back to the barn. I'm like, is Miles out? And he's like, Miles and Moritz, we're still fighting about the name, but Miles is probably going to win, much to my chagrin. So we're walking back and he's walking ahead of me. He puts Max at base camp because we know Max can't get out of base camp. And then he goes that way. I keep walking to the barn to see if Miles is still there. Miles is nowhere to be found. So then we call Nighthawk up. We're like, all dogs that are outside need to be inside just in case they come across each other because I don't know where Miles is. And we kind of hear barking off in the distance. So he was having a grand time in the woods. And, Max is like, bark, bark, bark. And he's like, bark, bark, bark. But Max is contained. Thank goodness Max walked up to my house, by the way, on this one. So Nighthawk and Tactical are going all over the place looking for the dogs on their four wheels. We never found Miles. Finally, I'm like, we're done. We can't, it's an LGD. It could be 5 miles away by now. So I put it out as missing on some of the community groups. And then we made sure Max was comfortable at base camp and went to bed. Kind of didn't sleep very well because he got a missing dog. And I'm like, well, that was a huge waste. Like the one dog. So between the two dogs, well, I'll tell that story in a second. Anyway, Miles was in particular the one we didn't want missing. And so poor Jenny is listening to Max bark while she's trying to sleep. And Miles is gone. Jenny gets up in the morning at the ass crack, and there they are, one on each side of the fence, snuggled up to each other. So Miles came back, and we got Miles contained. And then and that was the first day of Homestead boot camp visit. So we had somebody coming with a specific list of things. But what we had to do first thing in the morning was go to the store, buy cattle panels, make a very much stronger dog pen. So we ended up strapping together and T-posting 4 cattle panels, with one of the panels being a separation between where the sheep are and where the dogs are, so that they can smell each other and nose each other through it. But, you know, it's unlikely that a dog's going to attack a sheep or a sheep's going to attack a dog, right? And we got them all set up in there. And so the first job of Homestead Boot Camp was setting up, you know, Fort Knox for LGDs. And that was the cluster of the first arrival. I'm really lucky we had 2 dogs, because had I only gotten 1 dog and it had just been Miles and Miles had gotten out, we probably wouldn't have seen Miles again, or he would have been found miles away trying to go home, because he had not oriented on our place as a safe place. I think now, because they've been in this pen for days, they're doing a lot better. So here's what we're doing to orient them with the herd. And I've been mostly just following advice from Nick Ferguson. If you go online and ask questions about what to do with your LGD, you get opposite advice, very opinionated, and some scrapping about everything from, can you let them eat from your hand, to, are you allowed to touch them at all? Okay. To should they sleep inside your house at night? Like, there are a lot of opinions about this. These dogs' jobs are to protect their herd, and to protect their herd, they need to orient on the herd, and they haven't yet. So we're working on making them accept the herd as their pack. And the way we're doing that is by letting them interact, but with a barrier, so nobody gets hurt. We want them to have positive experiences with each other. At the same time, I need them to obey my commands and accept that I'm alpha, basically, and that Tactical is alpha. We have 2 alphas, 3 alphas. Nighthawk's probably alpha too. And that means positive and negative reinforcement, but we're bridging a gap between, if we do too much positive physical reinforcement, the risk is they will orient on us and not the herd. So I'm petting the heads, but not doing lots of belly body rub downs or anything of that nature, or going in there and hugging them. I'm using treats mostly as positive reinforcement. Yes, I am letting them take the treats from my hand. We're making sure that they always have food in the pen, so they're never thinking like, sometimes we run out of food here and we get hungry. We want them to think food is easy. It's available all the time. I don't need to eat one of those sheep, right? And then I have high octane treats, which they love. And the problem we have now is that Miles is taking to it, and Max has anxiety. The reason Max has anxiety is, as a puppy, he was attacked by the pack and hurt pretty badly. And so he is just more afraid of anything attacking him at this point. So Miles, I can lead him on a leash. He will sit. He will stay. He won't stay, actually. Nope, that's wrong. Teaching him not to jump up. Haven't gotten that done all the way, but do not want Great Pyrenees Anatolian mixes jumping up on you. He will come most of the time. We're still, like, it's taken me 3 days to make them more food motivated. When they got here, they were not food motivated at all, like treat motivated. And so we've gotten them more treat motivated. So he's doing pretty well, and he sees the sheep and he's like, oh, goody, the sheep are here. Wag, 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 wag. That's what I want, right? He's happy. Max is like, they're kind of scary because they're bigger than me. And he barks at him. Doesn't bark at him every time, but yesterday he was not aggressive, but kind of barky and almost like he wants to play with him like you play with another dog. No, we don't do that with sheep. A, it might kill him and not them. It could go the other way because they got hard heads. And B, he needs to know, I'm taking care of these guys, but I don't play with them like a dog. I play with Miles, but I don't play with the sheep. He also freaks out if you put him on a leash. So I've got to deal with the freak out on the leash thing. And it's taken days for me to get him to trust me enough to even take a treat for me. And now he looks forward to the treat. So we've gotten that far. So Max still needs to learn to come. He needs to learn to sit. But here's something interesting. He went for something I did not want him to go for. And I said, leave it. And he was like, whoop. And he never went to it again. As if they had already taught these two dogs how to leave it. Interesting, huh? So they can't sit, they can't come, they can't go on a leash. They don't know how to stay, but leave it happened. And he's getting no. So we've got leave it and no. And the problem with the timing of my trip to Maine is that this next week would have been a really good week for me to train Max. So, and now it's all on tactical by himself. And he's got a million other things to do. So I don't know how many training sessions he's going to get. I'm hoping he can schedule 15 minutes a day with the dogs. And ultimately, in order to finish training them, we're going to have to separate them. So this is the next thing about LGDs. We need to orient them on electrical fencing, which means I need them to be able to see it, know what it is, and not accidentally walk into it. And from the people we bought the LGDs from, well, we didn't buy them, they were given to us. From the people we got the LGDs from, by the way, free dogs aren't free. You end up spending a lot of, I got to get a vet out here to give them some heartworm shots and all sorts of stuff. That's going to cost some money. If one of them gets shocked by the fence and freaks out and goes, oh, 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 you know how dogs do? They're very unhappy when they get shocked. And our fence packs a wallop. The other one, they may get in a fight. So 2 reasons. One, the other one gets amped up because the other dog's amped up. There's nothing to take it out on each other. 2, the dog that got bit by the fence thinks the other dog bit it and it's on, right? Now, we saw Miles get shocked in its fairly enclosed area with Max, and they both amped up, and Miles came straight over to get a pet head because he was upset he got bit. And the other dog did not attack him. Miles is the dominant dog. Max is the beta. So it could just be that beta did not want to engage, and Miles decided that it wasn't Max who did it. I don't know what happened there. Or maybe the incident, because they had that happen once on their property at the other place, but not with these 2 dogs fighting with each other. There was a third dog that got attacked because it got hit by a fence and then everybody attacked it. Well, we don't want to risk the negative reinforcement of a dog getting shocked and then there being a big fight and somebody's hurt and all of that. So when we train them on electric fence, we're going to end up separating them, which means we need to build a second cattle panel pen that has cattle panels, and then inside it has the electric wire, one at the top, one at nose height for the dog, and one at the bottom for digging. And then we are going to use, so there's 2 types of braided wire we've been using. The cheap yellow stuff you get at Tractor Supply, and it's a thicker white, longer lasting premier fencing strand of wire that's for after we do the initial run through paddocks, then we're using that. It's a lot more visible. Dogs can't see that yellow wire very well. Ask me how I know, Cece. Cece does not like the outside sometimes. So we're going to have that in there. We're tying flags to it about every 4 feet so that the dog can really see, like, here is a visual barrier. Here's the electric fencing. That is what shocked me. Because I want them to know that thing is what shot me. I want them to see with their eyes, there's flags on this electric wire. The electric wire bites. I'm not going anywhere near it. And then we're separating that and doing it alone so that one does not turn on the other. And then we're going to have to rotate, so there's like the electric training pen and the other training pen, and we'll rotate them through separately. And over time, we will move with the step-in posts. By the way, we're putting it on step-in posts and not attached to the cattle panel. We'll move them further from the barrier so they start associating the visual barrier with the wire and not the cattle panel. And once that's done, then it's easier for us to put them in the electric area with the sheep. In addition to that, we want to have an extra perimeter fence in case the LGDs get out, to keep them in. So there's going to be a 4-strand perimeter electric fence around the paddock. So now we're having to double paddock or have a bigger area with that fence. I'm going to advocate for a bigger area with that fence because LGDs will run off. Everybody I have talked to agrees on one thing about LGDs, and that is that they will run off if they can get out. Even when you've oriented on the herd and the house, they will still go on a walkabout. So I don't know. That's where we're at with the LGDs. And that's been a lot of work. Again, every time you add an animal on the homestead, it's more work than you thought it would be. I was hoping that they would just take to the sheep and we'd go. Nope. And that's okay though. We need to have them. I have not oriented them with my dogs at all, or Tactical's dogs, or anybody else's dogs. That's something we need to address. But my big picture goal with them is basically keep them apart from our dogs as much as possible. Although I really, really, really don't want them to eradicate Cece if she accidentally gets out and gets near them. So we're going to have to try some submission things with Cece and with Chestnut. And I'd like to be able to walk past the sheep with dogs and not have a fight actually happen because the LGDs thinks she's a threat, right? So that's happening. Baby, the duck, died. That happens sometimes. Apparently, I think it's related to we have a rat infestation. So he came out limping one day and then he disappeared. So something got him. And this is what happens when you free range your livestock, your poultry. So hopefully we'll get another batch of ducks, but boo. Also, the Moscovis are not reproducing right now, for what that's worth. And as a result of that day, the Moscovis did not come back to the coop. So we've trained the Moscovis to go into the coop with the other ducks at night. No problems. All the ducks are getting along. Ducks are racist, so the one variety and the other variety stay separate from each other. But, they get along in the coop at night. And the other night, we went to put them in, and there were 3 out of 4. Two out of 4 were missing. And we found them down by the pond in this one place where they like to hang out. And then we had to chase them in. And this involved 3 people and one of us getting in the pond a little bit to herd them up. And then we put them away. And then the next night, Tactical found them all 4 of them in that same spot. They really like that spot. They think they want to sleep there at night. They do not want to sleep there at night, or a raccoon will get them. Herded them up. 3rd night, herded them up all the time, saying all ducks go to bed. And then last night, they were down there and he said, all ducks go to bed, and they slowly walked up and went into the coop. You have to train your ducks. And they were already trained to this, but what untrained them probably was that some sort of a predator got a hold of baby, hurt baby. And they saw that and they became afraid of the coop. And so they were like, well, we'll hang out down here. And we had to reorient them up there. So just know, even when you get your ducks trained, sometimes you have to work to get your ducks in a row again. But they're going back, and that's good, because I would hate to have a house sitter out and then the ducks don't go to bed, because it's way easier for us to deal with a situation like that than people the ducks don't know. Like, they're going to respond to Tactical more than they're going to respond to stranger they've met once. And they're like, you're not I'm afraid of him, but I'm really afraid of you, right? That's their perspective. And that said, we're still dealing with a rat infestation all over. They're in the fields. They're everywhere this year. It's really bad. It's bad for every homesteader I know. And so, as I said, I think a rat probably got at baby or a cat. Could be one of my cats. Who knows? Chestnut's sick. End of story. She's so when your dog's sick, it's like they pee in your house. I've cleaned up a lot of stuff this week, but she's getting better, but she's sick. That's no fun. Just extra work. Anyway, that's what's up with the livestock today. Next, we're going to talk about the happy stuff, grow. This time of year, the garden has a lot coming off of it, and not as much as former years, because that hot streak, the oven streak we had, really sucked for my garden, but it's actually bounced back pretty well. And August being kind to me has been awesome. So I am back to watering the garden again, though, because it's been about a week since technically we got rain 2 days ago, but it was like enough to make some leaves wet, not enough to actually make the soil happy. So we're back to watering, and I'm okay with watering. I'm using sprinklers instead of soaker hoses. Soaker hoses would be better, but we don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. And what I have is a sprinkler. So we run it at night, and I ran it, well, Tactical ran it yesterday. And then I'm going to move it to the hillside garden where I have more squash coming. I have some vegetables here in front of my house, and then I have the big garden with stuff in it. And the squash have like exploded everywhere because I didn't realize that the seeds I thought were summer squash were actually patty pan squash, which are vining and not bushing. And so it's just like it's turned into, about a 12-foot wide area of straight squash vines that you have to tiptoe among so you don't step on any of the vines to harvest. But they're doing great. So far, the squash bugs haven't killed it. Some of them are starting to have some pressure. I anticipate full eradication of most of those squash, except for the tromboncino and the cushaw, by the time I get back from Maine. But maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe they'll say. And as I said last week, my strategy with squash is just to put them somewhere completely different and way far away every year and see how they do. Because it's like the ones that were out in front of my house that always get messed up, got messed up. The ones on the hillside garden, which is 25 feet away, doing fine. Doing fine. I've seen a squash bug or two. I haven't had squash vine borer, but those are, I'm looking out there. They got some nice looking green leaves, and I've been pulling squash off them. So that's been great. The green beans are slowly trickling in. I'm getting about a mess of green beans a week off of the one row that's mature, and there are two sets of them coming back. So one of them's a bush bean that's vining. And then you know what that means? Mislabeled package. So I was like, you're awful long and straight for a bush bean. Oh, good. There's a trellis right here. Just climb that. That's what I did. And that's fine. I like vining green beans. I like pole beans. It's great. The dragon's tongue is looking good. And both of those should be producing when I get back, as long as they get enough water. So that's something that has to happen when I'm gone. Sweet potato green explosion. My entire aquaponics system, I put one little slip in there because I wanted to make sure to preserve that genetic line this year. And I wasn't going to be investing the time in a sweet potato patch because just too much going on. So I put it in there, and that entire bed, and it's flowing over into two other beds. I've got these sweet potato green vines. So I've been like rapidly cutting them back and taking the leaves off and chopping them up and throwing them in sautés at night. But I've got to give it a big haircut before I go, because actually my sage plant, my best sage plant, is under that and it needs light. So we're going to be giving the system a haircut. It's starting to try to take over the duckweed. It's kind of funny. It's like, I shall outperform all other plants. Thank you, sweet potato. So I'm hoping we get some good tubers out of that too. What tends to happen in an aquaponics bed with sweet potatoes is, as the roots hit the edges on the outside, it makes potatoes. So you have a tendency to find most of them around the perimeter. And this may actually result in perennial sweet potato problems, because I'm not turning that whole bed upside down and destroying the plants that are perennial in that bed just to get all the potatoes out. And it stays warmer in the winter because I put row cover on that. The water is heated. So that whole bed is a whole different thing. The water chestnut that Jack gave me, I have one plant left. Like it turned into this beautiful water chestnut bucket and then died back, and I don't know why. And I went down in there to say, like, did it chestnut out? Nope. So I don't know. I have the one plant. I might actually transplant it into a pot and see if I can keep it going and get it back to being happy again. I think maybe it was either underwatered when I was out of town last time and oven was out, or overwatered maybe, which I didn't think was a thing with water chestnut, but it could be. Those are the two things I would expect to be the most harmful. But once it started dying back, I was like, wow, this is just everything I try isn't working. So that is what it is. I'll try water chestnut again next year. This is my second year not being successful with it. I'm doing one big last round today in the garden before I leave, of just harvesting and processing. And the way I'm processing isn't canning. I'm like pre-freezing tomatoes and stuff, and making sure Tactical knows that he better eat cucumbers every freaking day while I'm gone, because I'm swimming in cucumbers. doing that before I leave, and then that garden won't get anything for a week while I'm gone. And that's a scary thing for a gardener, because I go in there like about every 3 days. I do a deep harvest. And what happens when you harvest on the regular is more things come on. And if you don't, then the plant thinks, it's the end of my life. I shall stop producing flowers and I shall start producing seeds. That's what happens. So I'm hoping that the 7-day pause that's happening will be okay for the garden. And then I did seed, because it's, you progressively seed things. I'm deciding right now which beds I'm just going to let go. And I have one chosen already that I'm just going to let it go. The 2 squash ones, I'm just going to let them go and die when they die. And then once that happens, prepare them for spring. Other ones I'm succession planting. So I've been succession planting carrots and beets. And if they germinate and grow, great. If they don't, then those beds will be ready for spring too. I need, if anybody's growing Swiss chard in Tennessee and wants to sell me about 15 plants, I did not start my seedlings, and it's a bit late for me to do it, although I could, but I'm going out of town for a week, so I won't till September 1st. It would be better to have Swiss chard plants. Specifically, I want Swiss chard plants to interplant with some things. So if you have them for sale, let me know. Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. Next segment is Holler Community. This is where we talk about what the community is doing, wider LFTN community, how we're helping each other out. And this is where I'm going to just tell you about Homestead Boot Camp. I told you Monday, we were just going into it, didn't know how it was going to go. And so we had somebody come and stay so half a day Monday, most of the day Tuesday, and about half a day Wednesday. It was our first time doing this. So we kind of took the approach of sit down and have a discussion about goals, and then start addressing things one at a time as best we could, while also exposing the person to the chaos of the homestead. And this week was a really tough week on the homestead from a perspective of livestock. And we hit the hardest part of the pasture for the sheep. So it was like, this is how brutal it can be. It wasn't like, hey, this was easy and that wasn't easy. No, it was like everything was hard this week. And she was great. Helped with things. We put in a lasagna mulch bed where the garlic had been. So I taught her how to do that, because she has an area that's already cleared. Like, this is awesome. It's bare clay at her house. And I was like, here's what I would do. Are you going to use that this fall? Nope. Okay. Lasagna mulch it in the following ways and just leave it until the spring. And hopefully you won't have to till in the spring, because what'll happen if you get the worms interested and you get a lot of organic matter on it is they come up and they churn that all in for you, and they're basically tilling for you. Now, this doesn't always happen as described, but even if it doesn't happen as described and you do have to till for your first year, which I am not a never till ever person. It's just don't till every year kind of person. I do no-till gardening. The tilling's going to be easier. And so we talked about what size garden space she may want to put in for her first year. She's interested in raised beds. We talked a bit about how to do that. And then I sent her with so I showed her how to lasagna mulch here after we cleared it. And she was a trooper. She put on the big old gloves and helped me with the rabbit poop spreading. That was fun. It was a little smelly, actually. And I said, so if I had a patch of clay that was bare, this is what I would do differently than what we did here, because I would do it a little bit differently. And then if I can't find one of the layers, don't sweat it. Just do them in the order that we talked about. And so that was I think that was one of the successful segments. She also learned how to string fencing and how to do that. And how to just sort of care for the sheep. She was first in line for seeing the dog orientation and how that's kind of tricky. So I think all in all, it was good. We had a really good time. And lessons learned from this is I actually think what we did for half day, whole day, half day should have just been half day, whole day, leave in the morning. Because pretty much that's what, like, she saw some fencing stuff in the morning, but it's a big commitment to drop everything you're doing to come here to do Homestead Boot Camp. It's roughly twice the work for us to accommodate somebody here because we're stopping to show, and then we still have to keep up with everything, and there's always a lot going on. And so I think like my lesson moving forward is I will have a tighter agenda where it's like this time to this time we're going to talk about goals on day one. And then we're going to do a tour of the whole homestead, show you all the systems, and then you can choose 2 to 3 modules of what we can actually dive into, whether that's garden beds, fencing, poultry, sheep, I don't even know, preserving, just have sort of modules we can roll out the next day. We'll have to hire somebody in to be on the homestead to do regular homestead things. Just because we're teaching, and when you're teaching, you're not getting as much done on the homestead, and you don't want things to die. That's how we will do it in the future. I think we can handle about 6 of these a year. And I am sharing this with everybody listening in case you're A-list interested in coming for Homestead Boot Camp. Now we have an idea of what it looks like. And B, if you're a homesteader and want to do a boot camp, steal my model, do my model, go for it, mentor each other. I want to see more people who want to learn how to homestead able to get sort of the skills. I have a request for the community. So I am doing a food forest install workshop here for my 50th birthday. Now, and the way this came to be is I'm turning 50, and I was like, you know what I really want? I want that food forest finally done. It's taken me years to figure out what it's going to look like, where it's going to be. Now we know. I'm going to do the install. And while I'm doing the install, I will invite people here to do an event during that so they can learn how to do it as well. And then we'll have fun and do the food forest install. In order to do this, I need to source some trees and some shrubs, most specifically blueberry, cherry, apricot, crabapple. I want 1 to 2 crabapple trees. Those are the things I'm looking for. I'm going to need to source some comfrey, but if I don't, I've got enough here that I can split it this fall and spread it around. Plus, I know somebody I think I can buy it from. So those are the things I'm sourcing. Most of the stuff I'm putting in, I'm cloning from things I already have here. So, and for the class, some of that will go in, and some of that will be like, I'm cloning the poplar right now, and this is where the poplar is going in the winter when I can transplant it, right? So, oh, by the way, if you haven't gotten your ticket, livingfreeintennessee.com. That's where the tickets are. It's like on a web browser on the right. If you're on your cell phone, you have to scroll for a little bit before you see the events and the workshops you can sign up for. But if anybody knows where I can source some of these things, and they can be in pots, I don't need them to be bare root, like blueberry, cherry, apricot, crabapple. I know it's a weird time of year. I've already got an order in with a friend who has a local variety of cherry that does really well. So we'll be putting those in, but not till December probably. Just let me know when that happens. And like if you know a source where I can get them, email me, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, because I want to get that set up sooner rather than later, just so we have some things on hand for that. Next segment is infrastructure, expanding supply. So this is where we talk about what we're doing. And pretty much all we've done this week is use money that was extra to get things for infrastructure. So as I mentioned earlier, we got money for Homestead Boot Camp, and we spent it on food for the sheep. And that means that we didn't have to use my money or Tactical's money for the sheep, for their food for the winter. So that was like that investment of time and energy helped buy food. We're also using some of it to buy additional step-in posts and fencing to be able to be more paddocks in advance, have them ready. So the goal is to have 3 sheep paddocks all wired up so that when we need to expand or move the sheep, we can do that and not have to just run all the, because what's happening right now is Tactical has to run the fencing, and then he moves the sheep, and then 2 days later he's like, I have to take fencing from here and move it there. So goal is 3 paddocks. That stuff's arriving, I think, next week while I'm gone, so that he can get 3 paddocks in advance, and that gives him that's almost a week worth, right, of sheep moving, and that's awesome. because then it's just like, hey, I had a crazy day today, and the sheep need new pasture. Burp, open it up. They're done. This is how we're going to start making sheep not take 4 times the effort and go back down to what we thought they were going to do. It's about getting ahead of the rotation. Makes a huge difference. That's everything for infrastructure. We haven't, you know what? We put in a bed up in my garden where the garlic was for next spring. And what's happening is it's like poop and feed and litter and then cardboard and then wood chips, right? It's just gonna sit there and get rained on for the winter. And if I feel like there's weeds that are gonna come up, I'm gonna tarp that puppy. Like, I just want the worms to churn it up. It's got fairly high clay content up there still, so we'll be doing that. That's the other infrastructure thing that happened, and that happened during Homestead Boot Camp. So thank you, Homestead Boot Camp person, for helping me put that bed in. We were so lucky with the weather. It was like 68 degrees out in August from 8 in the morning till noon that we're working on this. It didn't get above 68 degrees. Still sweating my butt off, like working on that. Like, showed her how to garden fork it and all of that. Like, we forked it before we layered it. Holy cow. Just imagine a typical August day of 90 degrees by noon. How awful that would have been. We would have actually gotten up at 6, done it, stopped by 8, and like, we got as far as we got. And tomorrow we'll try again, right? But yeah, the weather was perfect for Homestead Boot Camp. I was actually really thrilled with that. Anyway, that's what we did for infrastructure. On the finances, I don't have much to report that you haven't already heard about using money from one place to pay for another thing. That's homesteading, right? You're taking value from your land so you don't have to spend money. And sometimes you're expanding, right? I'm going to be selling lamb meat later this fall. That's going to bring money in that we use for things. So right now we have a lot of outlay on the sheep, and later we're going to have more meat than we can use ourselves. So that's the thing. That's part of why we do this. Then we're going to have piggies again. And I got a lot of pork. So that's what's happening on the homestead this week. I hope you all enjoyed the update. Again, a reminder for people in the live stream, if you have a question or comment you want me to see, put the first few words in all caps. And some of you did. I starred them as they went. When I close the podcast, we'll take a 5-second break, and then I will start just taking your questions. Tactical's not joining us this week because he dropped a crowbar on his phone. So unless he walks into my office because he's listening to this and takes some questions here rather than doing what he wants to be doing, you're just asking me questions this week. Anyway, guys, this is what life is like on a homestead. We had another crazy week. Next week, there will not be a homestead update because I'm out of town, but the following week, we'll be back to our usual schedule. With that, go out, make it a great week. Okay, now we're back to the nope, Tactical, I'm not sending you a link because your phone makes terrible noises. So unless you can tell me you have a headset, you need to come in here. Anyway, especially with your phone broken, like, you can't mute and unmute very easily. What questions do we have, guys, today? So I'm just going to go back through what I started already. If as you're listening to this, you want to say something you want me to see, just put a couple of all caps, because these eyes are not getting any younger. Did you hear that I'm turning 50 this year? Anyway, Pack Rat says, Keg County is the nickname for my adoptive county of west of the capital. Yes, I know what you mean. So this was when I was talking about these hills they're steep. Like, if you come out here and you see it's like steep and rocky and not friendly. But in the old days, when we weren't trying to use tractors as the primary way to do stuff, and we were still using mules and horses and those sorts of things to cultivate the land, hills weren't as big of a deal. And they grew corn all over these hills. And they took the corn. And there were stills in these hills. And if you read the history of my neighborhood, you will find out that we had we had 2 families on this street, everybody producing moonshine. This road was known for somewhere you don't want to be after dark, right? Not safe. And they fought with each other sometimes. There were some real bad characters here, but they were producing moonshine and selling it. And thank you, Pack Rat, for the birthday wishes. Looks like Tactical has joined us today. So if you have questions for him, just make sure that you ask him. He'll pop over if he needs, if we need him to talk. I'll move the mic so it's facing him, because otherwise it's awkward sharing a mic. My mic is directional. It goes like this. And if I move it that way, you can't hear me as well, can you? That's because it wasn't pointed towards me. Is there a video or resource you would recommend for a newbie to learn about considerations segmenting acreage for a pasture? The resource I would recommend is bring somebody like Nick Ferguson or Carrie Brown, or Ryan Steva's good at this. I think Tactical's good at this now. Bring somebody in to do a property walk and relate to your big picture plan, and they will help you think about where those lines go, and then follow. So Joel Salatin has just launched a homesteading course for $1,000, which I'm probably going to take too, even though I've been doing this 15 years. You can take it with me if you want to. But maybe check that one out. Joel Salatin's advice on pastures is put temporary fencing in. And if that is still there in 5 years, that's where you put your permanent fencing. And his pig fencing strategy is like, seeing that in person is what broke my brain block of how to deal with the pigs. So you can A, tour his farm, and B, he has that course, and C, definitely take his advice. Do not put permanent fencing in that you're not 100% confident of, because it's a huge pain in the neck to move permanent fencing. And the one exception I might have to that is perimeter fencing, right? If I had enough little piles of coin to just perimeter fence my whole property all the way, I would. Right now, we're closing in on a smaller area that has been perimeter fenced that took me forever to figure out where I wanted it, because I hate having my access cut off by fences I have to climb over. So just keep that in mind. But if you can, also, William Bond does permaculture consults too. Like, a lot of people do these, and as smart as we might be about our own property, having a second opinion on your property, whoever it is super helpful, because they will see things that you don't want to see. And if they see things you don't want to see, you still have to see them. And a good consultant will talk to you in advance before telling you stuff, because they want to know what your goals are. Kentucky Sustainable Living says, I want to be in on the food forest. I'm working on mine now. It's over at livingfreeintennessee.com. The price for the class, it's a 2-day class, but we're kind of there the night before and we leave the morning after. Includes food, beverage, and camping, and some fun and hijinks in the evenings. It's $400 US, or if you want to pay in Bitcoin, I give a discount. It's $360. So you can just sign up over at livingfreeintennessee.com, and we are happy to welcome you into the class. I've sold about half the seats this week. I don't expect them to last too much longer, but we will see. Brett Corriere, Chef Brett, hello. I've got comfrey to split. Yeah. Save me some splits, Chef Brett, because I'm going to be needing a bunch of splits as I move forward. And I've got some people talking about more resources for that question. So this is how the network works. Oops, that wasn't it. Paul Wheaton is selling a permaculture course for $65. He talks about fencing in it. I think I have a link for that. Let me pull that up. It was episode 605, I bet. Oh, 605. Anyway, yeah, he has a permaculture course that he totally put together. That it's like, I don't know how much it is, like maybe $50. I don't know. Is it 50 or $100? And it's hours and hours and hours of content that you can dig into, and it gives you that in video. It's, for me, video courses are good, and in person is good too. So I really also recommend that you think about having somebody out to your property. I'm going to unstar that Paul Wheaton one. There was another one, though, that I saw. Oh, Greg Judy. Greg Judy has a grazing class in spring and fall if you want more pasture knowledge. that would actually be good for Tactical and I to go to as well, because while we are doing our best with the sheep, it doesn't hurt to bone up on, things that we need to learn about on that, right? So there you go. Okay, next question is, nope, that's Brett. Oh, I saw this and it didn't have all caps, but I saw it and I wanted to respond to it. We have plum saplings I'd love to put out there. Contact me and I might buy some from you, because I love plums, and plums are one of the sorts of fruits I would like to have in my hold on, I just found the link I was looking for you guys. Copy link address. Here's the link to Paul Wheaton's permaculture course if you want to take it. Anyway, that's in the comments on YouTube. I don't see if Odyssey has any questions. Greetings from Knoxville. Yep. Hi, Wax Heretical. Anyway, so contact me. I'm interested in your saplings. Next question. Unstar that. Okay. Found out today that apparently some of our rivers have stones that are hundreds of years old that mark how low water that used to be, followed by hunger due to poor harvest caused by lack of water. Yes. Hunger stones are what those are called. And I found out those exist too this week because I saw an interesting article about it. That said, if you're worried about starving due to the current environment, right? What can you do to not starve? One of the things I think we've walked away from in the last century or so is that we depend on a centralized food system, which the power of it is it keeps our food super cheap, like more cheap than food used to be. And when there's a drought in one region, another region makes up for that and you don't starve. The weakness of it is if anything goes wrong in the efficient system, we could starve. And something that can lead to that is when the drought isn't just in a region, or when it's not just tornado damage or hurricane damage. You see what I'm saying? So a hedge against that is to source more locally and support people who are growing food in cottage scales, and to support your farmers more directly. Like if I'm going to buy meat and I can't get it here, I'm going to support somebody like Joel Salatin at Polyface Farm, who does mail order, rather than go to Butcher Box, who sources their meat in South America. Why? Because I want to support, if not my local people, I want to support US-based meats. Because if shipping falls apart, how are we getting that from South America up here? I don't know. That said, Butcher Box has a pretty good product from what I understand, and I know that they're a great company and they helped keep people in food when you couldn't find food in 2020, right? So I'm not dissing on them. I'm just saying I'm going to go to Polyface before I go to them because of where Joel gets his meat. And I have seen with my own eyes where he gets his own meat. Okay, Pack Rat's back. Did you say hard well water ruins your soaker hoses? And what is that spider-like plastic hardline system that you use that radiates about 8 hoses from one central point or hub, if that was you? Okay. Well, I'll let you talk about the thingy. It's about to be time for Tactical to talk about hoses. So I don't know about hard water ruining soaker hoses. I've not had that experience. My experience with soaker hoses is that with my low water pressure from my spring house, the one end of the soaker hose lets water out and it doesn't get all the way to the other end. So I use sprinklers, which transmit it through the air. Haven't had hard water ruining sprinklers. Usually something else ruins them, like I step on them before they get ruined by the water. Now, you talk about the other, get down here in front of that.
So I'm assuming what you're talking about is the mess of hoses coming out of her aquaponic or her hydroponic system, and all that is a homemade manifold that I made with a couple of PVC couplers and a cap on top, and it's all glued together, and then there's national pipe thread on the bottom so that whole thing just screws onto the top of the pump. And then I don't remember what the drill bit size was, but you can get, it's basically a coupler with a hose barb on one side and another hard piece on the other for putting the little sprinkler heads on. And what I did was just drilled the hole into the piece of PVC pipe, stuck the sprinkler head side, and just forced it into that little hole, and it stays. And then you've got the hose barb fitting to hook a piece of 1/4-inch drip tube onto the hose barb side. And then I have one hose going to each individual container. So it's a homemade thing. If I think about it while she's gone, I might hijack her channel, do a quick little live stream and show that. I did show it once on a live stream. I don't remember how in depth I went into that.
I feel like you have a request. Somebody wants to see your baffle. Is baffle the right word? Oh. I should know the words. I don't always know the words. Okay. Also, Scramblin says, hey, tactical. Okay, this one comes from Vicky. We have 9 acres, about 2 acres in the yard, 1/2 acre pond. The rest is woods. Do you think we could do a lamb or 2? You can do goats, pigs, or sheep in the woods if you're able to grow enough fodder, like stuff they can eat there. The thing is, you may want to clear some areas, I think, in that scenario. Like, first of all, they can do your yard if you're willing to have them in your yard. That's 2 acres. Figure out how many sheep you can rotate on 2 acres. And then in the woods, they will eat the underbrush if it's underbrushy, but you're going to want to create edges. So you're going to probably need to cut down trees to open it up to the sun to grow stuff. And what will happen over time is you'll have more of the things they want to eat growing. Pigs in the forest, though, that's what pigs were made to do. So I would explore like how Joel does his pigs. I'm going to give this one to Tactical to give his opinion too.
On rotating the sheep through there?
Through forest, mostly forest. 2 acres of grass and the rest is forest, and it's a total of 9 acres.
Yeah, I would start with a low quantity, so like 1 or 2. And basically what I've been doing is, if you try to look up online, what the calculation is for how many sheep per acre, you're going to wind up wondering whether you're trying to take a trigonometry, is this algebra, calculus? I'm not even sure what kind of math this is. So I just observe. So it's one of the issues that I've run into is where they're at right now, there's different thickets of different types of weeds. So I'm still kind of learning, okay, for this type of a weed, this is how long they're going to spend going through that. And as far as running them through the actual woods, one of the things that I will do to extend how long they're in there is cake and ice cream time. Cake and ice cream time for sheep is awesome. And all it is me walking through the woods, grabbing a hold of poison ivy and Virginia creeper vines and yanking them off of the trees so that the sheep can actually get at them and eat them. And then there's some other sections right now. I'm about to put a couple of the sheep in an area where there's a bunch of box elder trees that need to come down. So I'm just going to take a Sawzall over there and just kind of pollard them. I'm just going to whack them off at, 3, 4, 5 foot, drop the head of the tree down to the ground, and they'll sit there and pick it clean. So it's one of the ways that I will kind of extend how much they have to eat in those areas.
Yeah, that method is referred to as tree hay. So fodder trees, which a lot of the trees that are cake and ice cream for the sheep, I've noticed, are the same varieties that we're pollarding here for the sheep. Like they really like box elder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, box elder, goats love it, sheep love it. Nick wasn't sure how it would do with them from a nutritional standpoint, but it seems to do okay with ours at least. And box elder just grows everywhere here on its own. That means we already have fodder trees or tree hay available. And that's a strategy that has been used for a long time to keep livestock alive when your grass isn't growing that well. Because you know what? In the worst part of our little drought period we had this year, which was by no means anywhere near the scale of what my friends in Texas are going through, the box elders were putting out leaves, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a hedge, right? When you think about raising livestock and doing the best you can to get livestock food from your place and the grass is failing, if you learn how tree hay works or how fodder trees work, suddenly you have another food source that you can just fill. In fact, when the ladies are here, we should totally pollard that tree down by the pig pasture that's giant because they'll love that.
Yeah.
And then they won't need to move as much because when the ladies are here, yeah, they'll be having babies and they looked pregnant yesterday when I looked at them. I've been wondering if they're pregnant. I'm like, oh yeah, you got a belly now. So I'm hoping we figure out how to move these things before I leave tomorrow morning at like 5. Scary. Anyway, Mark USA YouTube says, get the man a 5-gallon bucket to sit on. What you don't know is he sits like this all the time. That's how he sits most often. He's Mr. Squat.
This is actually more comfortable.
That's more comfortable than a 5-gallon bucket. He's just shorter than I am. Okay, next one. Josie says, using effective microbes and soluble kelp helps as a soil drench under deep mulch. Really helps to transform the rock hard clay in my garden. If you brew your own, it's pretty affordable. Yeah, that's great advice. So hopefully my Homesteader boot camp person sees this, whose name shall remain anonymous because I don't have permission to say who it was. Okay, last question I have right now or last statement I have to highlight. And if you guys don't have any more questions, we're going to wrap for the day. Wild Blue Whippet says, also source beef for Texas Slim beef initiative. Yes. Again, what I can do as one person to help expand the stability of locally sourced foods is first support my immediate community if I'm not producing it on my homestead, and then source it from US-based people. And the beef initiative that is headed up by Texas Slim is 100% a great resource because his mission in life is to get us to start sourcing beef from the US again and be less dependent on international imports for that. So I highly, no argument there. Anyway, that's been the live stream Q&A for the day, guys. Thanks for hanging out for so long. Next week, we won't have that. I hear that Tactical Redneck might be hijacking my YouTube channel while I'm gone. And other than that, I will see you on the other side, unless we do the 3 p.m. live stream that's a super secret topic today. Make it a great week.